to my channel. Today we'll be talking about the thalamus. The thalamus is a diencephalic structure. It is actually the largest structure in the diencephalon. And of course, the thalamus is actually above the midbrain. Now let's draw the structure of the thalamus. These are thalamus. This is one thalamus. This is another thalamus. Now, like I said, the thalamus is a diencephalic structure, and it is the largest structure in the diencephalon. It can be seen as a large egg-shaped structure or an ovoid structure, a large ovoid structure that is located in the dorsal part of the diencephalon. Now, let's remind ourselves of the structure of the diencephalon. These are the thalamus, and then, of course, this is the midbrain. Now, in front of the thalamus we have the hypothalamus. We have the hypothalamus, and of course, the hypothalamus consists of what we call, it consists of the tuber cinerum and the medial eminence, the pituitary stalk, and of course, the pituitary gland. Also, it has another swelling, which is called the mammillary body. And then, of course, we have what we call the third ventricle. We have the third ventricle. Then we have the pineal body, or the pineal gland. We have the habenula nuclei and the habenula commissure. And then we have the subthalamus. We have the subthalamus. And then we have the superior colliculus and the inferior colliculus here. But then you should know that the midbrain is not part of the diencephalon. The midbrain is not part of the diencephalon. The diencephalon is actually above the midbrain. And then, of course, we also have what we call the medial geniculate body and the lateral geniculate body. The lateral geniculate body and the medial geniculate body. Over here we have the same thing, the medial geniculate body and the lateral geniculate body. Now, the medial geniculate body and the lateral geniculate body are actually known as the metathalamus. The pineal gland or pineal body, the habenula nucleus, and the habenula commissure actually forms the epithalamus. And of course, we have the subthalamus here, just below the thalamus. We have the thalamus here. This is the subthalamus. And of course, this is our midbrain. Now, there's one structure that is missing, and that structure is actually the optic tract, the optic nerve, the optic chiasma, and then the optic tract. We have the same thing over here. So you can see that the diencephalon consists of the optic tract, the optic nerve, the optic tract, the optic nerve, the optic chiasma, the hypothalamus, right? The thalamus, the subthalamus, the epithalamus, and the metathalamus. So these are actually the structures that makes up the diencephalon. And we can call it the dorsal thalamus. But then as the lectures proceed, we'll be calling it the thalamus. Now, if you agree with me, anteriorly, the thalamus forms the posterior border of the interventricular foramen, and also the thalamus actually overlies the superior colliculus. Superior colliculus. And the thalamus continues inferiorly with the tegmentum of the midbrain. And then medially, the thalamus forms part of the lateral border of the third ventricle. Now let's draw another structure of the thalamus. I'll draw another one. Now this is the right thalamus and this is the left thalamus. Now there is a white matter structure within the surface of the thalamus that divides the thalamus into a medial part and a lateral part. Let me draw that white matter structure. The white matter structure is like this. And then anterior-superiorly, the white matter structure splits into two, forming a Y-shaped structure. And then this Y-shaped structure divides the thalamus into three parts. We have the anterior part, the medial part. The same thing is applicable here. Now, this white matter structure is actually called the internal medullary lamina. So, the internal medullary lamina divides the thalamus into an anterior part, lateral part, and a medial part. Now, the anterior part actually contains the anterior group of nuclei. The medial part contains the medial group of nuclei. And the lateral part actually contains the lateral group of nuclei. But then, it is important to know that the lateral part is further divided into two parts. We have the dorsal tier nuclei, and then we have the ventral tier nuclei. So the lateral part is further divided into the dorsal tier nuclei and, of course, the ventral tier nuclei. Now, if you look at the thalamus, sorry, the same thing is applicable here. The ventral tier and the dorsal tier, and then of course this is the anterior part of the thalamus, and then this is the medial part. This is the medial part. And then this is the lateral part that is divided into the ventral tear and the lateral tear. Now, let me draw another structure of the thalamus. Now, if you look at the thalamus, you observe that this is the internal medullary lamina. Now, there is a white matter sheet. There is a white matter sheet that actually covers the superior surface of the thalamus. This white matter sheet is actually called stratum zonae. It is called stratum zonae. Then, on the lateral surface of the thalamus, there is another white matter sheet that covers the thalamus. That white matter sheet is actually called the external. It is called the external medullary lamina. So if you cut the stratum zonae, what you will see is actually the internal medullary lamina. And the internal medullary lamina divides the thalamus into an anterior part, medial part, and the lateral part. And of course, like I said earlier, the lateral part is divided into the dorsal tear and the ventral tear nuclei. Now, there is a connection between the two thalami. That connection is a band of gray matter structure that is called the interthalamic adhesion. It is called the interthalamic adhesion. If you don't call it the interthalamic adhesion, you also call it the interthalamic connection. Interthalamic connection. Now, like I said, the internal medullary lamina divides the thalamus into three parts: the anterior part, medial part, and the lateral part. The anterior part contains the anterior thalamic nuclei, or we can say it contains the anterior thalamic nuclei group. The medial part contains the medial nuclei group of the thalamus, and then the lateral part contains the lateral group of nuclei. Now also, there are other thalamic nuclei. There are other thalamic nuclei that are part of the thalamus. One of which is actually known as the medial geniculate body, which contains the medial geniculate nucleus, and then we have the lateral geniculate body. The lateral geniculate body contains the lateral geniculate nucleus. The medial geniculate body is actually involved in audition. The lateral geniculate body is involved in vision. Now, there is another nuclear group that is sandwiched between the external medullary lamina and the internal capsule. That nuclear group is actually called the reticular nucleus. This is the reticular nucleus. We have another one here. This is also reticular nucleus. The reticular nucleus actually have connection with the cerebral cortex. Also, like I said, there's a connection between the two thalami, and that connection is actually known as the interthalamic connection. Now, around this area, we have another nuclear group which is actually called the midline nuclear group. The midline nuclear group. Of course, they are also present within the interthalamic adhesion. Also, it is important to know that within the internal medullary lamina, we also have another nuclear group here. That nuclear group is actually known. That nuclear group is actually known as the intralaminar nuclei. It is known as the intralaminar nuclei. Now, a good example is the centromedial nucleus and the parafascicular nucleus. Now, let's look at another structure of the thalamus. Now, like I said earlier on, the thalamus is actually a mass of gray matter that has a white matter structure that divides the thalamus into three parts. We have the anterior parts, we have the medial parts, and then we have the lateral parts. Now, the anterior part contains anterior group of nuclei. So, over here we have the anterior thalamic nucleus. Now, for the medial parts, we have what we call the medial dorsal nucleus. For the lateral part is divided into the ventral tear and the dorsal tear. Now, let me draw the dorsal tear. Now, the dorsal tear contains the lateral dorsal nucleus and the lateral posterior nucleus. And also we have the pulvina. Also, just inferior to the pulvina, we have what we call the medial geniculate body and the lateral geniculate body. So this is the medial geniculate body and this is the lateral geniculate body. The medial geniculate body is implicated in audition, and then the lateral geniculate body is implicated in vision. Now, coming to the ventral tear, we have the ventral anterior nucleus, and then we also have the ventral lateral nucleus, and then we have the ventral posterior nucleus, or what is referred to as the ventrobasal complex. Now, the ventral posterior nucleus is further divided into two. We have the ventro-posterior-medial nucleus and the ventro-posterior-lateral nucleus. Now, like I said earlier on, at the lateral parts of the thalamus, just lateral to the external medullary lamina, we have a group of nuclei that is called the reticular nuclei. The reticular nuclei. The reticular nuclei actually receive afferent fibers from the cerebral cortex, and also it receives information from the reticular formation of the brainstem. And also, we have another group of nuclei that is actually called the midline group of nuclei. The midline group of nuclei. This group of nuclei is called the midline group of nuclei. This is the medial group of nuclei, where we have the medial dorsal nucleus. Now, coming to the internal medullary lamina, like I said, we have a group of nuclei here, which we actually call the intralaminar nuclei. Intralaminar nuclei. Now, one of such nucleus is actually called the centromedial nucleus. Centromedial nucleus. And of course, we have another one, a smaller one, that is actually called the parafascicular nucleus. Parafascicular nucleus. Now, these various nuclei group actually are involved in sensory function, limbic function, and motor function. The nuclei that are actually involved in sensory function are actually the ventral posterior nucleus, which consists of the ventral posteromedial and the ventral posterolateral nucleus. And then, of course, we have the lateral geniculate body, the medial geniculate body, and also we can include the pulvinar. Then, the nucleus that are actually involved in the motor function of the thalamus are actually the ventral anterior nucleus and the ventrolateral nucleus. The ventral anterior nucleus and the ventral lateral nucleus. This particular nuclei are actually involved in motor functions. They are associated with the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. Then, the nucleus that are actually involved in the limbic function of the thalamus are actually the anterior thalamic nucleus, the medial dorsal nucleus, and of course, the centromedial nucleus. These particular nuclei are actually involved in the limbic function of the thalamus. Then the midline nucleus, which actually has connection with the reticular formation of the brainstem, the function of this midline nucleus are actually unknown. They are actually unknown. So thank you for listening. I hope to see you